So I'm Phyllis Koster, and I've been a hand weaver for, almost 40 years now. It's hard to imagine, but it's true. I don't feel that old. I did start weaving in college. Although I had an early experience with weaving, my parents took me to the Landis Valley Farm Museum. Now I'm from York County, so this was a big trip. We had to cross the river. And this very, very lovely lady let me get up on her loom bench and weave with her. And I just fell in love with the beater and the fibers, the tactileness of them. It was just, I just really loved it. I always was a kid though that was always making things, so I was destined to be a maker, somebody that made stuff. So currently, my husband and I have a little gallery in Wrightsville. It's called Weavings, Ink, because he's a pen and ink artist, and I'm a weaver. So that's 5 years old now, and we have group shows, and we have student art shows, and it's just fun. As long as it's fun, we'll keep doing it.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah.
So I love that you were introduced to weaving when you were so young. I myself really did not come in contact with it until I was in college. So when you decided that you thought you wanted to do something with weaving or something in the arts, did you ever feel like you were pressured or questioned as to how you were actually going to make a living from weaving?
I was not. I do see a lot of pressure these days to be able to explain how you're going to pay your bills. But at that time, it was more, the focus was more on doing what you love, on finding out what it was that you couldn't not do. Mm-hmm. The thing that you had to do or really were really drawn to. It was more about expressing yourself than it was about paying the bills. That has a good side and a bad side. There's got to be a balance somewhere.
Right.
And maybe maybe we're getting to that. I hope so, because I really think that for your quality of life, it's really important to be doing something that you love. Mm-hmm. If you are somebody who really wants to teach, then I think artists that teach are wonderful. I was not drawn to teaching. Mm-hmm. It just, one-on-one or small, lessons or, things like that, I thought would be great. But large groups of kids were kind of scary to me, as you can imagine. So no, in fact, my parents were very, very supportive. They even at one point said if I wanted funding to set up a small shop, a gift shop or a weaving shop, that they would back me on that. And it's interesting because nobody in my family really had a background in art.
Oh, wow.
My husband comes from, a father who was a commercial illustrator and painter, and he grew up with that. Mm-hmm. And knowing how to use that and pay the bills with it, but also all the technical stuff. But my parents were very, very supportive, and I realized later how lucky I was to have that.
Yeah. No, my parents were also really supportive. I was, I guess, a little bit easy on them in that I always wanted to be a teacher. So there was the mix of the art with the teaching world that maybe made it easier for them to embrace. But they have always really supported me in art, and there are a lot of artists in my family. So I think that does sometimes make it easier when you're not the first one blazing the path. Right. So what advice would you give to someone who, is in high school or is in college and they're thinking, I'm passionate about making art and this is what I want to do as a career?
Well, I think I suggest to them that they look at the whole picture of what being an artist means. For instance, unless you're one of the really, really fortunate ones that someone discovers and is willing to pay a lot of money for your artwork, you're likely to have a different lifestyle, maybe. Unless you're fortunate to marry somebody who has a really good paying job with health insurance.
Right.
No, seriously. That's a big thing. And, health insurance has gotten to be a really big deal. We've, always paid our own health insurance, but it's a drain. But we live a very simple life. And so I think you need to look at, are you the type of person that is going to want to have the newest car or the biggest house? And are you going to be able to do that and do your art? You have to prioritize. And I think that's what I'm trying to say is that you need to prioritize. And if your art's a priority, then go for it. The other thing that I think I would suggest to them is that they get some background in business. I didn't do that. I kind of had to learn the hard way of how to do books, and I'm really just learning how to promote myself now. Mm-hmm. I've always been so focused on doing the artwork, and I think a lot of artists are like that. We'd so much rather be doing our artwork than doing our books or promoting ourselves or taking the time to learn the computer program. But I think that's really important, and I do think that there's more. That was never even suggested to me in college. Mm-hmm. And so I think it's a really good, they've made progress in that area. Mm-hmm.
I really love your point where you said about you have to think about what kind of lifestyle you want to live, because that is so true. If you truly love making things, you can cut back in other places. I mean, my husband and I bike to work a lot. We don't have TV. But that's totally fine. I'm happy to be in my studio. I really don't need TV. I'm entertained with my loom. But I think that's a good reminder to think about, and that sometimes you just have to change your perspective a little bit as to and be honest with yourself. What do you really want your life to look like, and what's most important to you?
Yeah, be very honest with yourself. And don't let somebody tell you that, you're not an artist if you choose another way of making a living. You can still be an artist and be an insurance adjuster. It's just not going to be the thing you do with most of your time. And the other thing that I've found is that your personality should be suited to the type of work that you do. So, for instance, I've always liked to spend a lot of time by myself. I mean, I like people, I like being with them, but I need a lot of time just by myself. Mm-hmm. And so if you're the kind of person that's very gregarious and social and really want to be with people, probably picking weaving isn't the best thing. You need to be able to concentrate on what you're doing. Generally, you'll work by yourself. Mm-hmm. And just think about, other things besides just making the objects. But what does this mean to how I'm going to live my life?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, cool. So when you decided that you were going to go to college and study weaving, did you kind of have an overall plan as to what you wanted to do with weaving? Or was it just like, I am in love with weaving, and so I'm going to go to college and do it?
Okay, it's not even that simple. I was so clueless. Well, I did decide that I wanted a bachelor's degree because I wanted to have what they called a well-rounded education. Okay. Looking back on it, I think it would have served me better to go to an art school, but, I didn't. The other thing is that I didn't actually study weaving in college because where I went, I studied it the first year I went to college. Okay. When I went to Delaware. It was a textile course, and that's where I fell in love with weaving. Mm-hmm. But then I ended up at Millersville for financial reasons. Loved it, but I did ceramics, jewelry, printmaking, everything. They didn't teach weaving. Mm-hmm. So I went to Penland School of Crafts for 2 weeks, and that's all of my formal weaving training, and that one little intro course. And then I'm pretty much self-taught. There are easier ways to learn things than what I've done.
I think that's still a good example and a good story, in that, you don't really have to have a direct path, and you don't have to know where you're going. When I went for art ed, the art part of things, I thought I was really going to focus on ceramics, and that's what I started out. And then I actually took one weaving course and fell in love, and that's the only course I've ever taken. They only had one level. And so at this point, that's everything else I've learned from playing and reading. Mm-hmm. So sometimes it's okay if you kind of start off in a little haphazard manner. It can work out in the end.